It's the planet, stupid.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet.
Earth.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
And here is our guide for It's the Planet Stupid, Belinda Waymouth. Belinda, I don't think I Happy New Year, first of all. I don't think I smoothly explained our circumstance in the planet, but nonetheless, you get the idea. We're challenged in ways that threaten the continuing of Earth with populated by human beings and other species as well. And there's no better way to say Happy New Year than looking down the barrel of a mass extinction event like we are probably in the last. So happy New Year. Yeah.
Wow. What a way to start the new year. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for that intro.
That's what I'm here for. Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Pragmatism. And
right.
Okay. So Happy New Year, everybody. And I actually really want to talk about a New Year's resolution that will help the planet and us. And I'm going to see if I can sort of logically, I want to walk us back from the thing that you talked about, Kim, at the top of your fabulous, news segment, these crazy storms that are hitting California right now. Mm-hmm. So why are these storms so devastating? People have heard, atmospheric rivers, and they're these huge, they're sort of these linear atmospheric events, and what happens is the winds that come across the Pacific pick up all this warm, tropical, moist air. And why is the air so moist? The air is so moist because it's getting hotter. So the hotter the atmosphere gets, the more water it can hold. It reaches the coast of California. It goes up against the Sierra Nevada mountains. Those weather systems cool, they reach their dew point, and then they start dropping this torrential rain and snow. So that's what's happening here. And why is our planet heating up? Well, it's heating up because we consume too much. And the stuff that I tweeted and was talking, sending you guys links to were, there was this incredible article the other day about the crazy amount that Australians are spending on storage spaces because they're buying too much stuff. We've just had Christmas, we got a lot of presents. So what I really want to, talk about this morning is this, insane rate of overconsumption that we're in. And if we could pull ourselves back from that and be more mindful about what we buy, we could lower our emissions and really do ourselves a favor. And one of the things I've actually, it'll come out after the show, I did ping you on it, Mark, this tweet about stats for the rate that US population is consuming and using storage space. I mean, it's kind of out of control. We spend $40 billion a year in the US, as a nation on our storage units. 1 in 10 US citizens has a storage unit. We have about 3 billion square feet of storage unit space in the US. And this, I think, is really, really telling and shows you sort of how much it's growing and how much excess stuff that we have. We buy so much furniture and, things, we can't fit it in our homes. The profit margin for people running storage units. So most industries have their average profit margin is 22%. For storage unit owners, it's 41%. That's how huge this industry has become. So we really, 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 we need to do ourselves a favor, guys, and we need to stop spending. I mean, if we stop spending, it'll be good for our wallets, and, the planet can be a secondary thing if because most people are motivated by their wallets, how much they're spending.
Let me just understand this, and then I want to double back to some stuff going on in the chat right now about weather, because I know a little something about weather and climatology, and so I will put that aside for the moment and talk to you about what you've just said. When you talk about these storage units, you're saying it's a reflection of consumption that is sort of growing instead of living in some sort of sustainable way. So, I mean, because I can say to you, hey, shouldn't you be able to, I don't know, if you got too much stuff and you want to get a storage unit, what's the big deal? You know what I mean? You want to overpay for your storage unit? You want it to cost you more money? Fine. Isn't that your right as a, as a citizen or whatever it might be? But I think what you're suggesting is, no. This is a reflection of the fact that we don't live sustainably. We live in this way that just is about consumption, and every year that situation gets worse. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, because the thing is, of course, everybody should be able to do what they want with their money, with their excess, money. Yes, you should be able to shop and buy the things that you want, that you love. But the fact is, we're overdoing it. And this overconsumption and this sort of drowning in our stuff has become a norm. We're surrounded by cheap, things that get made, in, not good working conditions in countries with lax environmental codes. We love it because the stuff is cheap. But the fact is, and then we get bombarded with advertising telling us, that we can't live without the stuff. And as soon as you walk into a store, I mean, I look around and go, look at all the stuff that I'm living without. But the fact is that everything, so what do? Don't go into stores. But the thing is, everything you buy has a carbon footprint. It has to be transported from where it gets made to here. And the fact that we get all this cheap stuff, first of all, it was China, as they got richer, their wages went up. So then we had to find other places to have our stuff made, Vietnam, Bangladesh, where we could really find sweatshop labor again. But okay, so the average cost of an item of clothing has got down to $6.5, $6.50. It's crazy. But the actual environmental cost of shipping that stuff, transporting it to the store, you driving to the store, it's not just the item. There's a whole, it's got a backstory, Mark, as we all do.
Right. No, thank you for putting it in the context also of the carbon footprint. And also, I would suggest, landfills and the rest, and this stuff ends up all over the place. Now, I want to double back to what you said about the weather. I would have stopped Belinda if she said anything that wasn't accurate from the standpoint of explaining the dynamics of the storm that's moving into California now. She's correct. Warm air has the capacity to hold more moisture than cold air does. So these warm air taps of moisture, Pineapple Express, Pineapple Connection, you want to call it atmospheric river, that seems to be the new kind of thing they call it. Fine. You heard Spencer talk about these same things. It's the same phenomenon. That's why there's more water dropping. But let me just quickly address what's going on in the chat here, because I'm hearing this, and there is some truth to what I'm seeing, which is, we can't point to any one weather event and say that's because of a global warming or because of the sort of phenomena that we discuss here with Belinda regularly. But what you can say is that we're getting more of these extreme weather events globally, and that they are following with almost an eerie congruence the spike in fossil fuels and the spike in temperatures globally. So, I mean, if you want to say, hey, that's just a coincidence, that's just a one-off, I was here in the 80s and we had storms that were just as big, you're right. Hey, I was in San Francisco in the Bay Area in the 80s. I can tell you exactly how severe they were because I was forecasting them. But the idea somehow that you can just turn a blind eye to these severe weather events, I think that is equally bankrupt of any credibility. So that's all I would say. So yes, we have to be balanced this way, but when we look at changes in the planet, I think it's fair to point to global warming and this fossil fuel production as one of the causes for these extreme weather events. I think honestly, I think it's indisputable. These rises in global temperature, as I say, they match the kind of spike in these global weather events. Sorry to go off on that, but I'm seeing a lot of this in the chat, and I just wanted to address it here while I still could.
Yeah. No, and it's absolutely true, Mark. And look, I was here in 92, there was an El Nino, event. It was a crazy, crazy wet winter. And, the first couple of years I was in Los Angeles, that's how the winters were, and then, we've been in this drought condition. Yeah, of course, there's always been, extremes in weather. But it's scientific, fact at this point. And also, even before we were talking about climate change, that warm air can hold more moisture. So as we heat up the planet, there is more moisture in it. And, the storms are worse. And when you look at, the tornadoes that we get, in Tornado Alley here, I mean, the numbers of them, the frequency which they come, how quickly they start up. And, so that's warm air coming off the Gulf and meeting cold air coming down from the Rockies. And this is what it is. It's the changes, in the temperature, as I was describing in the beginning, when this moisture-laden air reaches the Sierra Nevada mountains, it cools down as it goes up over the mountains, reaches its dew point, which was drummed into me in my in an environmental geography class that I took. And then it releases the moisture and down it comes. And, if you look at the storms that are happening in the Bay of Bengal in Bangladesh, they're sort of at this, this sort of terrible Goldilocks position, at the northern, tip of this Bay of Bengal, and all these tropical storms that then come up and release all this water. This is being exacerbated by a warming atmosphere. You just can't refute it. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, yes, exactly what you said. We've always had extreme weather, but it's getting more extreme.
I would just say exacerbated is a ding word, and it's pointed out in the chat, congruence is a ding word. You're right. And then we addressed in the first hour, Randy, but I'll post your La Nina occurs when the temperature of the sea is cooler than the average in the Eastern Pacific. Of course, that's right, resulting in less evaporation, weaker storms, less moisture in the atmosphere. And it was, how does the La Nina situation align with what Belinda said? We addressed it in the first hour with Spencer Christian. And at that time, I said, which is pretty much all I can say since I made the point you did, which is, hey, man, it was an El Nino event in the 80s when we were talking about storms in California and we were getting pummeled. Russian River area was flooded, and there were all the situations that seemed to be, we're sort of on the verge of many of these situations now. It was an El Nino event. And for the first time, we talked about sea surface temperatures and the way they related to weather. But now this is supposed to be a La Nina year with cooler sea surface temperatures. So I think, to be fair, that's a question that we need to address. That doesn't completely invalidate a lot of our concerns about the changing planet. It simply does bring up questions about that relationship between the La Nina and El Nino events and weather on the West Coast. There is no question but that sea surface temperatures can and are reflected in what's going on weather-wise. There's no question about that. The physics of it is so straightforward. But La Nina and El Nino may not be 100% indicators, as you, I think, reflect in the question you asked. And we even asked that question in the first hour of Spencer Christian. We were all like, I don't know. I mean, I even said, is this BS we've been talking about, El Nino and La Nina? I always put a lot of faith in it. But anyway, I wanted to address that as well. Sorry, Belinda. It's storming like crazy, and people now are talking about that in relation to a lot of these things that we speak of regularly about the planet. So,
yeah. And look, the thing about it, and someone just said this in the chat, and it's really true, it's about the frequency of all these things. This is what we're seeing with climate change, is the frequency, and the frequency is, undoubtedly, up. And also, I mean, it's sort of, look, we already have scientific consensus on climate change. 97% of, climate scientists in the world say, climate change is real. We're driving it. We need to stop, putting all this, methane and CO2 up into the atmosphere. And, that is, beyond argument at this point. So, it's really, I think, kind of a waste of energy to keep doing that. What we need to do is be focusing on what we can do to mitigate it, and
yes, you're right. That's so well said. I mean, as he says, is it that every instance of severe weather seems to now be related to climate change? No, I get it. Not every instance of severe weather is related to climate change. It's what Belinda's saying, which is the constellation of so many severe weather events has to be viewed in some context. If you view everything as a one-off, you're literally never drawing conclusions you need to draw. I mean, I don't need to give you a parallel from your own life. I'm sure you know if something seems to be happening a lot, you go, gosh, why is that thing happening so much? And there are conclusions you can draw. So I think that's what's being said. I'm sorry to, yeah, go ahead, Belinda. I'm sorry, Kim, go ahead.
I just like to, I love Belinda's resolution about less stuff. I just completely cleaned out the Mark Thompson, Nikki Maduro studio here. And you would not believe, like, just stuff I didn't need, stuff that was sitting around. This room used to be, before it became the studio, the place where you open the door and if you didn't know what to do with it, you stuck it in here. Okay, so that's all gone. But I mean, 5 bags worth of garbage and stuff that I didn't want or need. And it bums me out that I had it in the first place. So I'm with you, and I'm signing on to the Belinda Waymouth New Year's resolution to just have less stuff. And from now on, when I buy something, I'm going to ask myself if I really need it and where I see this ending up 3 years down the road.
Yeah, I mean, that's so great, Kim, because if we're mindful about how we shop, they say always shop with a list, don't walk into a store when you're tired or hungry, because you'll be more likely to shop.
Totally.
There's a great book called Cheap, the High Price of a Discount Culture by this woman, Ellen Ruppel Shell. And I took it years ago when I was doing a psychology, environmental psychology class. And I said, I want to read the book about overconsumption. And when it explains how your brain, your nucleus accumbens, gets so excited when you're confronted with bargains, we go bonkers. We buy all this cheap stuff that we don't need. And it's not good for us, as well as the planet. And before everyone starts saying in the chat, we can do what we like. Yeah, you can. But when you really think about it, and I've also said this on the show before, and I think it's really important because the first piece I ever read when I sort of, started blogging about the environment was about our overconsumption. And, I've said it before on the show, I'll say it again, frugality. It does not mean cheap. It means the wise use of resources. It used to be, something that Americans, that they were into it. They wanted to be wise about their resources. I mean, I've told you about my friend Heidi. Her grandparents live in a house built in the 1800s on the East Coast. Her grandmother lived with the same furniture that had been in the house, since the 1800s, wore the same green polyester pantsuit for Christmas every year. That's sustainability, ladies and gentlemen. That right there.
You can find her on social media, Belinda Waymouth, Waymouth, and you can find her here on Thursdays. Never enough time to speak with her about things that are, some of them are so controversial as well. But great to have you with us. Belinda Waymouth, everybody. Yeah.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Belinda. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.